I think that a lot of intellectualizers and a lot of people who overthink and analyze and know themselves so well and know why they are the way that they are some of the people that struggle the most. And you probably don't know why, because you've spent so much time identifying where your problems have come from and identifying and studying your background and your childhood and your teenagehood. And you've probably replayed it over and over again in your head, but you still feel stuck and you still feel caught up in your emotions and you still get triggered and you don't know why. And that is what I'm going to explore in this video. I love TikTok. It's my favorite app. And because I'm so interested in self-help, healing your nervous system, getting away from shame, emotional processing, psychology, all of that stuff, my For You page is full of those types of videos, which I absolutely love. One thing that I've noticed is when I look at the comments of some of the videos on emotional regulation and self-help and therapy, a lot of people comment things like, I went to see a psychologist once and she just told me I was too self-aware, and I am so self-aware, I didn't see the point in going back. Something along the lines of, I'm too smart for therapy, I know where all my traumas are coming from, I understand myself inside out, I don't need to go to therapy, all of this stuff. And I think that is one of the most common but also dangerous narratives that someone can have, and that is exactly where I was at around 3 years ago when I started to see my psychologist. I call her Stephanie, but that's not really her name. So if you've ever thought something like, I know all about myself, I know why I am the way that I am, I know why I have the struggles that I have, I understand why my upbringing has brought me to the way I am and has led to some of the fears that I have now, I don't need therapy, it's not going to be any point. If you ever think something along the lines of that, then this video is for you. I'm a huge intellectualizer. I honestly thought I was too self-aware for therapy. I can psychoanalyze anyone. I can identify where someone's trauma is coming from. I can identify my own. I psychoanalyze myself so much every single day. And yet, somehow, I did feel stuck, and I do still feel stuck. And that is because you cannot think your way and you cannot psychoanalyze your way out of your emotions. So, for example, if you are someone who fears abandonment in relationships, you might understand why you fear abandonment in relationships. For example, maybe your parents were not always there for you, or you were constantly alone as a child, and you still don't know how to deal with it when someone pulls away from you in a relationship. And you can understand that concept as a whole, but you don't know how to feel it and you don't know how to manage it when something happens in the end. And then you just end up going into relationships where you are fearing abandonment, and it keeps happening and happening, and there's a cycle, and you don't know what's going on. You think you're managing it really well, but you're still panicking every time you're with a partner. So I guess there's two things. One is intellectualizing and one is self-awareness. So I'm going to talk about self-awareness first. So self-awareness is knowing exactly why you are the way that you are and being able to observe yourself from sort of like a third party perspective, watching your thoughts, watching your feelings, and knowing and being able to identify where they're coming from. I've been pretty self-aware throughout my life, and I think I've been able to define a lot of my feelings and thoughts, negative ones and positive ones. But the truth is that self-awareness actually doesn't equal emotional healing and nervous system regulation, which is where a lot of our struggles come from. Whether you've had small trauma or large trauma, you can perfectly understand where your trauma comes from and also not be able to heal it and not be able to move forward. You can still be repeating the same sort of negative habits, patterns, the same negative thoughts about yourself, feel yourself get into massive emotional outbursts or feeling completely numb. And being self-aware actually doesn't help heal the root cause of all of those emotional struggles that you're dealing with. So now the second part, which is intellectualization. I'm going to read the definition of intellectualization. So it's a psychological defense mechanism where individuals focus on logic, facts, and abstract thinking to avoid dealing with uncomfortable or distressing emotions. This was such a major one for me, and I actually sort of knew about the concept before I started seeing Stephanie. However, I didn't really realize to what extent I did it, which was massive in the end. But essentially, intellectualization is a form of protection. And it's usually from very, very sensitive people who feel very deeply. They feel their anger and their sadness and their fear and all of these emotions so deeply that honestly, sometimes it can get too much for someone to constantly face those feelings, especially if you've had a troubling childhood or you've had events that have happened when you were growing up that have made you feel so scared of these emotions that have risen up. So what you end up doing is you end up thinking about your emotions and analyzing your emotions rather than actually feeling them. It causes a barrier between you and your emotion and kind of makes you feel like you're in control and you're safe because you are thinking your way out of situations and thinking your way through life. This often happens with people who have grown up feeling quite highly attuned and highly sensitive to those around them and are trying to make sense of chaos that's going on around them, whether that's in school, at home, with their friends, and it can be a really powerful defense mechanism. So, the way that you gain control over your life, because at the end of the day, a lot of humans just want to feel like they are in control. You can talk about your issue and why you feel that way about the issue for years and years and years, and you can still feel stuck because at the end of the day, you are trying to organize your feelings and organize your thoughts instead of actually just feel your emotions deep inside your body, which is what I learned during my time with Stephanie. I think one key thing to identify whether you are an intellectualizer and if that is what is making your problems actually worse and that you are causing a bigger blocker between yourself and your emotions is if you can talk your way very clinically through your issues, but vulnerability actually feels unsafe to you. You don't feel like you can cry in front of people. You don't feel like you can cry at all. You don't feel like you can be angry. You feel like you're scared of being angry, or you are scared of feeling scared, or you are just protecting yourself from all of these hard emotions. Emotions like sadness and anger, they don't actually want to be analyzed. If you think of them as like little people, like an inside out, they don't want to be analyzed and they don't necessarily even want to be understood. They want to be felt in the human body. When an emotion rises up, it is a signal that is telling your brain that you are feeling a certain way and the emotion needs to be processed. Knowing the story behind the pain that you have felt in your childhood and the pain that you are feeling now as an adult with an inner child doesn't heal it. It's more like just naming it without actually processing it. For me personally, I've made videos about this. I've struggled a lot with self shame and also people pleasing and being highly attuned to the needs of people around me and really feeling caught up with everyone else's emotions and feeling very anxious when someone looks disappointed, feeling really scared when someone is not happy with me or they're angry or even just not happy in general, and I tend to tie it to myself, feeling uncomfortable with other people's discomfort, and that is a huge part of my journey and what I actually started going to therapy for. And up until the point where I started to see Stephanie, my psychologist, I knew exactly why I was the way that I was. There are certain dynamics that have happened throughout my life with my family and also with friends that just happened to work out. So I developed people pleasing as a defense mechanism and a really strong way to protect myself from all of these negative feelings of sadness, anger, fear of hurting people. And by sort of blaming myself and giving myself the responsibility for others, it protected me from the emotion of being let down when someone didn't show up for me the way that I needed them to, or it just protected me from people not hurting me, basically. So I've written down a list of things that seeing Stephanie has really helped me with, and things that I learned with her that I would have never learned had I continued to think that I was so self aware that I didn't need a psychologist and I didn't need to talk about these issues with someone who was professionally trained. So, one, she really helped me set boundaries without guilt or over explaining, because you can understand why you struggle to set boundaries, for example, and that was me in my case, and I still couldn't do it. Like, I literally could not bring myself to do it because I didn't understand the root of why I struggled with it so much. Like, I understood that maybe it came from a fear of school or my upbringing, but I didn't really understand the root emotional cause, which comes with the guilt and it comes with the over explaining. So the first really, really important thing that I was taught was being able to feel through discomfort of setting a boundary. And that is not something that you can think your way out of. It is genuinely something that you have to feel. The next thing is she gave me tools to feel my feelings instead of analyzing them. So, for example, she taught me how to name my feelings and name where in my body I feel it. That was one of the very first sessions I had with her, and I was really stuck and really lost because I didn't know how to name my feelings. I would just keep saying that I feel anxious, and she would tell me kindly that anxiety is not actually a feeling, it's a masking feeling. So, for example, if I was going into a pattern of people pleasing again, I would say I feel scared and I feel it here and I feel it in my stomach. And it felt really vulnerable to say in front of someone. And it honestly felt really embarrassing and shameful to say in front of someone. And even saying it now, like to the world or where whoever's watching, feels a bit embarrassing and feels a bit shameful, to be honest. And that is not where I want to be. I don't want to be somewhere where I feel ashamed of having these emotions and feelings in my body, but that is just where I was at, where I'm at now. And even just learning how to identify them really, really helped. You won't see how it helps in the very beginning because you're just like, I don't get it, like, what? But honestly, like with time, you'll see how naming and feeling the emotions and just letting them run through your body helps so much more than overthinking ever does. Another thing is she helped me navigate shame. I didn't really realize I was still feeling in my system. As humans, we're adaptive and we can honestly lie to ourselves over and over and over again every day until the day you die. Like you can lie to yourself and tell yourself a story about yourself that's completely false. And one thing that I was lying to myself about was things around self-worth. So feeling unworthy or growing up and being put in situations which have made you feel unworthy in the past and has bled onto your current life is super heavy, and shame sits in your body. Like, no matter if you're spiritual or if you believe in, I don't know, your body keeping the score, which I do, I believe your body keeps the score and you hold traumatic experiences in your body, including shame. And it's really hard to get rid of without that emotional processing. Shame actually gets worse and worse the more you intellectualize and the more you overthink, because shame comes from a negative core belief about yourself. You're not good enough, you're too much, or you're too this, you're too that. Like, that is where shame comes from. You're not worthy, you don't have power, you don't trust people. And that's not something you can think your way out of, because shame is so deep inside your body that you're constantly acting and projecting from that feeling of shame. Whether that is, I need to succeed and be the best in my job, otherwise I am unworthy. Like, that is acting out of shame. And you are actually essentially living your whole life acting out of shame and thinking it's a good idea to constantly try and prove yourself wrong or prove others wrong. So that's a huge thing that actually feeling my feelings and having a space with Stephanie every 2 weeks or every month has helped me reflect on. Another thing is that it's okay to hold conflicting feelings at the same time. So one thing that Stephanie taught me in relation to my people pleasing is you can understand where someone's coming from and you can understand that they don't have a bad heart and they're not being malicious, but simultaneously not allow them to treat you in a certain way where they are disrespecting you, or you are disrespecting yourself by allowing someone's behavior. And this is one thing that was massive for me. I didn't realize that someone could be a good person and hurt me at the same time. I also didn't understand that I could fully understand someone's behavior and understand how their traumas have led them up to this moment where they have maybe hurt me, and I didn't understand how to simultaneously feel hurt by them while understanding that they're not malicious or a bad person. So a lot of things along those lines I have learned in therapy, and I honestly could not be more grateful because it has helped me navigate life so much more without that constant chatter and anxiety in my head trying to justify my way out of every dangerous situation, and by dangerous, I mean something that is triggering a deep emotion of sadness or fear or stress. So, a lot of people think that therapy is for people who are completely unaware of anything, for people who are maybe a bit dumb emotionally, or they just don't understand themselves and their self concepts. And that can be true. But honestly, I think that therapy and seeing a psychologist and seeking professional help is especially for people who have so much anxiety that they're trying to manage, because they have constant words running through their brain and constant intellectualization and constant overanalyzing, constant psychoanalyzing. They can't get out of bad habits that they're constantly in. They can't rid themselves of feeling like a failure when they've dropped something, feeling like a failure when they haven't performed at work, feeling like a failure when they're not a good friend, and knowing and being able to identify why, but also not being able to get out of it. That honestly is who therapy and seeking professional help is for. From someone who honestly thought this way myself, I swear 100% this, like, that it is more for me than I ever thought. So if you're self-aware and you're quite emotionally literate, therapy is going to meet you there, and they're going to be able to understand you because you have learned and performed such a eloquent way of describing yourself. And if you over intellectualize and over analyze, you will have a certain self concept. For example, I walked in thinking I'm someone who is ethically and morally sound. I need to do the right thing all the time. It's kind of stressing me out. I just need to do the right thing. I need to do the right thing. And that was my self concept going into therapy. And I explained that to Stephanie. She met me there, and she understood that. She took all of that emotional literacy and she brought me in to having some emotional fluency instead. Like I said, navigating feelings, understanding your window of tolerance of what you can handle, what you can emotionally handle, what's too much, what you need to get better at, moving into your body, feeling emotions where they sit in your body, learning that self trust that you can handle uncomfortable emotions, because a lot of people who over intellectualize have a core belief that they actually cannot handle negative emotions, which is why you're constantly trying to protect yourself from situations that would ever make you feel a negative emotion. Another thing you learn, emotions aren't negative. So using an example that's actually not about people pleasing, and maybe something that I've heard a lot of people have a struggle with, is overworking. So a lot of high achievers and overachievers have done that their entire life. They have performed well in school and they have gotten grades and results and compliments and validation from overperforming. Now, going into the adult life, you start getting very stressed and overwhelmed about work because you are constantly trying to achieve at work and constantly trying to get that validation of achieving at work. What overachievers are protecting themselves from is actually the disappointment and the sadness that comes with not receiving your self-worth from your work. And so you will constantly be working and working and working so hard to protect yourself from ever feeling that disappointment and sadness that you are not getting validation or you are not getting seen through your work. So, as someone who's an intellectualizer, you can understand why you are overworking, but you cannot actually stop it. And what therapy helps you with is identifying that you can actually sit with that disappointment and you can actually sit with that fear and sadness and anger in some ways that you are tied to your work. And it will teach you the tools to manage those emotions when you are not receiving that validation, when you are not getting your self worth through your work. How do you feel? How do you manage that through your body? Because if you don't know how to manage your emotions, you're just going to think your way out of it and then just continue to work hard and hard and hard until the day you die. So that sounds really morbid, but that is honestly something that that I dealt with a little bit less than all my other stuff, but it's something that I dealt with and I'm dealing with, especially with someone who has struggled with ADHD traits and also feeling like a bit chaotic and feeling all over the place. I've felt the need to prove myself for a long time because I couldn't sit with the feeling of actually feeling like I don't have worth, or feeling like I have nothing to offer. And that is scary, and it's so powerful when you actually learn how to do it. And one day at a time, one step at a time, you realize you're getting better. You're getting better at not feeling so anxious. And the reason you're not feeling so anxious is because you're not trying to protect yourself from feelings. It's not about being fixed, it's about feeling whole as a person, feeling like you are able to handle life's problems, you're able to handle emotions at a large scale, or a wider scale than you were originally able to manage, and feeling like you trust yourself. At the end of the day, you have learned that self-trust, and you trust yourself to move through life, and you trust yourself to manage situations and people. It's not somewhere where I have ultimately reached. I don't know if I can reach where I want to go, or if that is just like an arbitrary goal, but I don't know if you can ever reach anything, but it's something that I've improved on so much, and I feel so proud of myself, and I feel so proud that I started. And I completely, this is why I'm making the video, like I completely just don't agree that if you are self-aware and that if you intellectualize, that you are too smart for therapy. I honestly don't believe that at all. And a lot of the reasons why people don't stick in therapy is because feeling those emotions with someone is honestly very intense. Another reason why people don't stay is because sometimes people just aren't the right fit, and you need to do a bit of shopping to find a good psychologist, because it's almost like dating. I wouldn't say it's as hard though. I got quite lucky with my first, but I had one bad psychologist like in uni days. But she was okay. Like she wasn't terrible. She just was a bit new. But yeah, you do need to do a bit of research and a bit of shopping, which I will actually want to do a video on, like how to find a good psychologist, because I did get lucky, but I think I also did a bit of research on it. So that's another story. Um, what other notes did I want to say? I think that's basically everything. All I wanted to say is if you have thought about it, or if you have gone through a few sessions and you thought, oh, this is useless, like honestly stick with it, or find someone who you feel comfortable with and who feels like a safe space for you, because it's changed my life in so many ways. I didn't realize that I could ever progress in this way through emotional healing and through feeling emotions. It's been such a blessing for me in my life, and I just want to put the word out there to help anyone who's ever been super, super anxious or overthinking, and they just don't know how they can ever get out of it, and they don't think therapy is going to help. Like I said, I was there, and it does. It does help, and it brings you to face your darkest self and your darkest moments and your darkest feelings and thoughts, and it brings up this honestly scariest emotions, but in a way where it's safe and you're able to handle it, and the thinking your way out of things lessens and the anxiety lessens. And that is all I needed and could ask for. I promise it will help, and it's worth the money, and it's worth the investment, it's worth your time. So that's me. I am going to enjoy my Sunday now. I'm pretty hungry, so I think I'm gonna eat some eggs on toast now. And hope you all have a really good week. Bye.